Hey, something came to my head, so I thought I'll share it with you quickly. There was a moment when I went to service with this, well, I just went to service, right? And I met this lady, and she was really knowledgeable. Like that lady knew her stuff. So when we were talking about the Bible, she knew exactly what we were talking about. We would quote the scripture, she would tell us the context of the scripture, and she knew her stuff really well. So I thought, hey, you know what? If that's the case, let me come back with an elder who really knows the Bible, and maybe we can start a Bible study with her. Maybe we can share something. Maybe we even learn something from her, right? Like she really knew her things. So we set up for a return visit. I took the elder with me, and when we started talking, she was prepared. I mean, she was waiting for us. She was happy to see us. She had on her table three different translations of the Bible, and we talked. We talked about some doctrines, but I noticed and I've never seen that before. I noticed that elder got super uncomfortable, and to the point where he was like, "Okay, um, he was looking for an excuse to leave, and at one point he couldn't find any legitimate reason to leave, and he says, "Okay, sorry, we have to go." Just gets up and we have to go, and I'm like, "I know we don't have to go. I know we still have time." But he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but we have to leave right now," and blah blah blah, and most likely we're not gonna come back. And I'm like, first of all, that was my return visit, not yours. And he was so odd, such a odd way of reacting. I've never seen anything like this, and I'm not saying everybody reacts like this. It's just it was him. We left the apartment, and I'm asking him like, what the heck, like what happened there? And he said, listen, we go preaching, we go and teach people, we preach to others, we're not there to be preached to. That woman, her mind was closed. She was only there to teach us what she thinks is right. But we're not, that's not why we're there. We're there to teach others who want to know. And there was no way of changing her mind. She didn't want to. She refused to study the book that we had. She said we can study the Bible, but I don't want to study any publications. And at that moment, the brother just stood up and left. And when he said it, I'm like, well, that's how we are. Like when we go door to door, right? Like we're trying to convince people that we're right and everybody else is wrong. So we just met somebody who's the same like us, and it was shocking for me because I'm like, how is it that we're not willing to discuss the Bible with somebody who actually had enormous amount of passion for the Bible? They knew the Bible inside and out, and we refuse to talk to that person. That was really shocking for me. But then that experience helped me to understand how Jehovah's Witnesses think. See, when Jehovah's Witnesses think, they're not taught how to listen. They're not actively listening. What they do is when they're quiet, when they're not talking, they're preparing a defense. Preparing a defense because that's what it was programming to their mind. That if somebody says, I'm not interested, there are five different ways of overcoming that objection. If somebody says, I'm busy, there are five different ways. We can find them in the reasoning book, and that's how they program their mind. If somebody says, I believe that God is Trinity, we have ways of dealing with this. If they say that somebody has immortality of a soul, anything like this, we have scriptures prepared. So when somebody shared something with us, whatever it was, straight from the Bible, history or logic, whatever it was, all what we did when we listened is we prepared a defense to show that we're right and you're wrong. Unless you agreed with us, of course, then it was fine. But if somebody shared with us something that disagreed with our beliefs, something that was new, and we were like, it doesn't match, then automatically we were programmed into preparing a defense to overcome the objection. That's not listening. That's not humility at all. That's ego. That's ego talking. And Jehovah's Witnesses have very, very high ego, but a very low self esteem. And those two things are totally different from each other. So we had this ego because we believed that we had the truth, that we have the best understanding, we have the best Bible, we have the best organization, we have the best love, we have the best I don't know, scriptures and whatever. The best, the best, the best. That's ego. That's ego. So when we were talking to other people, we were always trying to prove them wrong. Now, this kind of trait of thinking, although we no longer believe the doctrines and we no longer believe that is the best organization, could very easily stay with us because we could switch one set of beliefs to another set of beliefs, and all what we do is trying to prove everybody else is wrong. So somebody would go from, okay, I don't believe in the organized religion, but I believe in Jesus, and now Jesus is the way and the truth and the light, whatever it is. He's the truth. And when you're talking to the person, they're not open to anything else because they are convinced that they found the truth, they have the truth. And when they're talking and when they're quiet, you're making your arguments, your opinion, um, uh, your point of view. Basically, you're sharing, and that person seems like they're listening. They're quiet, but they're not listening. They're not viewing you as a source of information that could be useful. They're not seeing you as somebody that would have certain knowledge that could that they could use. They're trained to defend their beliefs, just like every Jehovah's Witness was always trained to defend their beliefs no matter what, even if it was irrational, even if it didn't make sense. And I remember even like when I was a kid, and um, I would tell my teacher why I'm not going to uh, celebrate, what was it, Women's Day, International Women's Day, and everybody was pitching in to buy flowers for the teacher. And my teacher would ask, like, okay, we're pitching in to buy something for the principal of the school or whatever. And he asked, why not? And I'm like, I had no defense, actually. I didn't know why not. I'm like, well, we don't celebrate anything. Like, and he says, why not? And I could defend maybe, pagan origins when it comes to um, Christmas and stuff like this. But International Women's Day, I didn't know how to defend this. So, he looked at me and was like, okay, you're not celebrating this, but you don't know why? And I'm like, well, it's kind of a religious thing, right? Like, we don't celebrate anything and blah, 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 right? He couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand either. But no matter how strong of the argument somebody else would bring in, my mind was so closed because we're right and they're wrong that I would never take anybody else's point of view as they are right. And one of the first things that we need to learn, not want to, but need to learn, is how to actively listen, how to listen other people's opinions with open mind. That doesn't mean you have to accept it. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but listen with an open mind that maybe out of 100 things that they said, maybe there's one, maybe there's two, maybe there's five, maybe there's 50 things that you will learn and accept is like, oh, that makes sense to me. The other one doesn't. That resonates with me. This one, maybe they're mistaken. This one, maybe it's partially accurate, and that one is not. So it's important to learn how to listen. And in order to learn how to listen, what first thing that has to go is what? Ego. Your ego's got to go out the window. The moment you say, I have the truth, it's ego talking. It's ego talking. Because when you believe that you have the truth, when you believe that what you believe is correct and everybody else is wrong, whoever disagrees with you, that's ego. See, humility is not thinking less of yourself, because that's what we're told that you can't think much of yourself. No, humility is thinking of yourself less. It's not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. You got to think of others, and you got to look at others as a source of wisdom, of knowledge, of things that are useful because they have perspective, they have experience that you do not have. That doesn't mean they're always right, but it means that we can learn from anyone, even a child. And that helps you to grow. See, with high ego, you don't grow. Jehovah's Witnesses don't grow. If you meet a Jehovah's Witness at the age of 50, 20, and you meet him 20, 30, 40 years later, he's going to be the same person. There's very little growth. They will think the same way, and they all think the same. You meet the Jehovah's Witness across the world, and you know exactly what he thinks about blood. You know exactly what he thinks about marriage. You know exactly what he thinks about sex. You know exactly what he thinks about smoking. You know exactly what he thinks about politics. They're all the same because they don't grow. And if we want to grow, if we want to expand our mind, that ego has to go and learn that, oh, you know what? My perimeters of thinking, they have to change. Previously was one source. That's the source of information that it's tested and truthful, and that's the channel of communication with God. So it has to be pure. To finding out that there is good in everyone. You can learn from everyone. And if you learn from other people's mistakes, it's the best way. But you got to make your own too. You got to have both. There's a big difference between I've heard that this guy did this and it didn't work out for him, and I tried this myself and oh boy, it's really painful. I never want to repeat that again. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. We've made lots of mistakes. I made lots of mistakes. We're going to screw up many times. That doesn't mean something's wrong with you. That doesn't mean that you're wrong all the time. That doesn't mean that you're a failure. Sometimes we feed our minds with these things because we were told that you were born with a sin. You were like, a cake with a dented form. And because Adam was this form, and there was a dent with this imperfection, and everybody after that was this cake that came with that imperfection. So the moment you're born, you're already messed up, and it's impossible for you to fix it. With that mentality, how can you have any good self-esteem? How can you grow from that when you always, from the birth, you feel like you're a failure? There's nothing you can do about it, and you have no control over it either. So going forward, yes, we have to start being humble, but in a real humble way, which means that you will learn from others. You are not the smart. If you're in the room, who said that? I think I'm not sure who said it, but if you're in a room when you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Because if you surround yourself with people who are not as smart as you will never grow. So, in order to grow, you got to surround yourself with people who know things you don't. People who will disagree with you, people who will call you on your shit. I'll say, hey, you know what? That's what you're saying, but look at the result that brings. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, right. Okay, it didn't work. It sounds right, but it doesn't produce the right results. So, yeah, that's what I want to share with you. Think about Jehovah's Witnesses who discuss things with you. You think they're listening to you, they're not listening to you. Their mind is not open. And until it would be open, okay, and the only way to open somebody's minds is with thought provoking questions, with striking curiosity, not by giving facts and figures. You give Jehovah's Witnesses facts and figures, they're going to become defensive. They're going to try to prove you wrong. That's what they're trained to do. But if you ask thought provoking questions, things like, what if? I wonder if that's entirely accurate. Was there any time when this was not 100% true? Is it possible that this belief could change with a new light? If you start asking thought provoking questions, you have a small chance of opening their mind. But if you give them facts and figures and what is wrong with their way of thinking, the chances are zero. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.